Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. It's time to update our 4K monitor recommendation guide for 2025 so far. I've tested a bunch of new products since our last update, including the latest 27-inch 4K OLED panels, so it's definitely time for an updated list and a reassessment of which products are the best value. Like we mentioned in our 1440p monitor guide, the current economic climate isn't the best, especially in the United States, where tariffs continue to be a mess for consumer electronics like monitors. In these sorts of buying guides, there's usually a heavy focus on the price of monitors. After all, what ultimately matters is value. But that's difficult to discuss right now when tariffs are making things unpredictable. We just don't know whether the prices we're talking about today will also be the case in a month or 2 months from now, especially as existing inventory is replaced by fresh shipments that are then subject to tariffs. With that in mind, I'm going to try and do my best to navigate the situation and still make this guide useful for people in North America and other regions around the world. As usual, there will be many monitors recommended in this video, so hopefully when it comes time to hit the buy button, at least one of those options will be appealing. We have links in the description below to check current pricing and purchase these monitors if you're interested. As with our previous best of videos, we tend to talk about and recommend monitors we've personally tested and know to be good, or monitors that are very similar to products we have tested. It's always worth going back and checking out the dedicated monitor reviews we produce for more in-depth thoughts on each product, but just so you know, these recommendations are not sponsored in any way by any company. They're based on our testing and reviews. Right now, the best 4K gaming monitors on the market are 32-inch 4K OLEDs. 27-inch models are available now as well, but to me, the larger 32-inch panel size is more immersive for 4K gaming, and prices aren't too different to the smaller models. But why OLED and not LCD? Well, there are two main qualities to OLED panels that significantly enhance the gaming experience relative to an LCD. One is their lightning-fast transition times, leading to elite motion clarity that exceeds an LCD operating at the same refresh rate. And the other is their individual pixel control, which allows pixels to fully switch off to display deep, rich, zero-level blacks, and it means there's per-pixel local dimming for brilliant HDR control at the pixel level, no backlight zones to worry about. There are two main 4K OLED panel types on the market right now. There's a 32-inch 4K 240Hz QD-OLED panel and a 32-inch 4K 240Hz WOLED panel. Both offer the aforementioned fast response times and per-pixel control, the cornerstone of OLED, but there are a range of differences between the panels. Originally, I leant towards the QD-OLED option being better, but the more I've tested these OLEDs, the more I find it hard to settle on a clear preference. Ultimately, I think what you like in a monitor will determine which panel is a better choice, and our 4K WOLED versus 4K QD-OLED video from 2024 goes into more detail on this. You should pick a 4K QD-OLED monitor if you want a glossy screen coating. The only glossy 4K monitors on the market right now are QD-OLED, as all the available WOLEDs use a matte finish. This is a personal preference thing, but I know some buyers won't consider an OLED unless it's glossy, in which case go QD-OLED. You should also pick QD-OLED if you want the widest color gamut and highest color brightness, and in some scenarios, though not always, QD-OLED's overall brightness is superior. You should pick a 4K WOLED monitor if you want access to dual mode functionality, which allows the panel to run at 1080p 480Hz for increased motion clarity, in addition to 4K 240Hz. This is a great feature if you play competitive games because it allows the panel to run faster and with lower input lag. I think it works seamlessly and adds to the versatility of the panel. You should also pick 4K WOLED if you want a more consistent brightness experience between high and low APL content where you don't have to worry about panel dimming or different HDR modes. There are lots of 32-inch 4K OLEDs on the market right now, and within the two panel families, performance tends to be pretty similar. You're not going to see differences in response times, brightness, contrast, or general capabilities, and most come with similar configurations out of the box. This means it's generally down to how the manufacturer has tuned the monitor, as well as additional features, as to which products are the best. Here are the monitors I recommend and why you might consider each one. The Asus ROG Swift PG32 UCDM is probably the overall best 4K QD-OLED on the market, with the most features including an accurate sRGB mode with unlocked settings, fantastic HDR accuracy, ELMB black frame insertion, and Dolby Vision support. In a lot of regions, this ROG Swift monitor is the most expensive, and it has an MSRP of $1,300 US, but I am starting to see regular sales bringing it down to the $1,000 to $1,100 range. At those prices, it's well worth considering. MSI offer a couple of cheaper options in the MPG 321 URX and the MAG 321 UPX, which are both in the $900 to $1,000 US range. The better of the two is the 321 URX, as it has more USB ports and better factory calibration, but the 321 UPX is also available if you want to save a small amount of money. These are not as feature-rich as the Asus model, no black frame insertion or Dolby Vision support, but performance is still excellent and they are typically better value. MSI also offer the MPG 322 URX, which is essentially the same monitor as the 321 URX, but with the addition of DisplayPort 2.1 instead of DisplayPort 1.4. If the pricing makes sense in your region, it's definitely worth considering the 322 URX, but typically it's much more expensive and hard to justify given how similar it is to the 321 URX. I would get the MSI model if it was at least 10% cheaper than the Asus model, otherwise the Asus is the better buy. The Dell Alienware AW3225QF is the model you'd get if you want a curved screen. I personally prefer flat as I think it makes more sense on a 32-inch 16:9 panel, but if you love a curve, Dell has you covered. Performance is very similar to the Asus and MSI models with a good feature set too, including Dolby Vision support. In many regions, this is one of the cheapest options and presents great value, often beating the MSI variants. Gigabyte also offer two 4K QD OLEDs, the Aorus FO32U2P and FO32U2, but in some regions they are becoming harder to recommend due to their price, which can be several $100s more than the MSI, Asus or Dell variants. Still, you should also consider the Gigabyte models if you want more HDR modes than its competitors, which gives you a bit more customization over how the display performs. Calibration is as good as the others. The FO32U2P is more expensive due to the inclusion of DisplayPort 2.1, but I don't believe this is worth paying a huge premium for, so I'd lean much more towards the FO32U2. Samsung also offer multiple 32-inch 4K QD OLEDs, the G80SD and G81SF, which are 2024 and 2025 versions respectively. I've tested the G81SF and it performs reasonably well, though it isn't as strongly calibrated as the models from other brands. The main reason to get the Samsung models is they come with a matte coating, so if you want matte plus QD OLED, the G81SF is the way to go. The main difference between the G80SD and G81SF is the former has Smart TV functionality and the latter, newer model, does not. If you can grab one of these on sale, you might find its excellent value in your region, but the MSRP is too high in my opinion. Finally, I also recommend the Asus ROG Swift PG32 UCDP if you want the 4K W OLED panel instead. I've also tested the LG variant, but I believe the Asus model is clearly better due to its superior performance, features and tuning. This one is pretty simple. Buy the PG32 UCDP if you want the W OLED panel and its dual mode functionality, better brightness performance in brighter scenes, and matte coating. It's a great display, but is on the pricier side at $1,200 US. Again, a lot of this comes down to the price and specific features you might be interested in. I think all of these models I mentioned have various strengths that are worth considering at the right price, and you won't find drastic performance differences from one model to the next. These 4K 240Hz QD OLED and W OLED panels are excellent, and I think you'll be really happy with one. With that said, I would generally only recommend OLED for content consumption such as gaming or watching videos. There is a risk of permanent burn-in with OLEDs exacerbated by static content like you would see when using productivity apps and web browsers. For mixed use cases or situations where you primarily use your display for work, it's difficult to recommend an OLED right now. What about a 32-inch 4K LCD monitor for HDR gaming? I find these difficult to recommend at the moment because the OLED panels are simply better for gaming. Of course, I understand that not everyone will want an OLED due to concerns around brightness or burn-in, but most of the alternate LCD options on the market at the moment are very underwhelming and haven't impressed me when I've tested them. The Samsung Odyssey Neo G7 is still available and you can often buy them around $700 US, which is a great price for a 32-inch 4K 165Hz VA LCD with a 1196 zone full array local dimming backlight. It's a decent monitor with fast response times, great HDR performance and no risk of burn-in. This is usually the monitor I recommend as an LCD alternative, but I'm still on the lookout for something better to recommend, particularly something with a 240Hz refresh rate or greater that doesn't have deal-breaker flaws, the sort of product that would be more competitive with the latest OLED offerings. As things stand, I'll continue to lean towards the Neo G7 as an HDR-capable LCD gaming monitor. While the 32-inch models I've just been talking about are great choices, they can be a little large for some setups, which is why many people prefer 27-inch monitors instead. If you're one of those people, there's good news. 2025 has seen the release of 27-inch 4K 240Hz QD OLED panels. These are from the exact same product family as the 32-inch variants, so they offer very similar performance characteristics. Essentially, they're a shrunk-down version with a higher pixel density. I've tested 4 of these displays in 2025 so far, and all of them are great products that are worth buying if the price is appropriate in your region. These are the Asus ROG Swift PG27UCDM and ROG Strix XG27UCDMG, the MSI MPG 272URX, and the Dell Alienware AW2725Q. Like with the 32-inch models, the general performance on offer with each monitor is very similar, so the deciding factor comes down to price and features. Right now, the best option on the market is the Asus ROG Strix XG27UCDMG. I say this because it's very similar to the PG27UCDM, which is the overall best performer, but is priced at the lower end of the range. Relative to the PG model, the XG model removes DisplayPort 2.1 and Dolby Vision support, but retains a bunch of other useful features, including the Neo proximity sensor, OLED anti-flicker feature, unlocked sRGB mode, KVM switch, and more. So despite being the cheaper variant, it's still one of the most feature-rich OLEDs on the market. The XG27UCDMG is supposed to have an MSRP of $900 US, but with tariffs and everything, that might be a bit volatile. Still, it's $200 cheaper than the PG27UCDM for what is a very similar product, so I would only consider the PG version if you specifically wanted its additional features. Alternatively, in the future the price gap might be a lot smaller, in which case either model could end up a good buy. The Dell Alienware AW2725Q is also worth considering, as it's typically the cheapest model in most regions. It's not as feature-rich as the Asus variants, but still packs excellent performance, and with a current price tag of just $830 US, it's offering great value. In Australia, it's just $1,200 compared to $2,000 for the PG27UCDM and $1,700 for the MSI MPG 272URX, making it by far the better choice. In Europe, you'll find similar with pricing below €1,000, making it a toss-up with the XG27UCDMG. These are clearly the two leading options at the moment. The MSI 272URX isn't a bad monitor, but it lacks the feature set of the Asus variants and is often priced more like the PG27UCDM, whereas in my opinion it should be towards the lower end of the range. This is a monitor I'd only consider if it's available at the same price as the Dell model. Again, it's not bad, it's just badly priced. There are, of course, a lot of other models hitting the market right now that use the same 27-inch 4K QD OLED panel, and in most instances they should offer very similar performance to the products I have reviewed. For example, I would expect the 27-inch Samsung Odyssey G81SF to perform very similarly to the 32-inch model that I reviewed, so depending on local prices they could be worth considering. Later in the year, we're expecting to see 27-inch 4K W OLED panels become available, but right now the only option is QD OLED. What about LCD variants at a smaller 27-inch size? Well, unfortunately, I'm still on the hunt for a great OLED alternative at this size, and I've been disappointed with the 4K LCDs I've tested so far. I don't want to recommend something without having tested it, as with mini LED LCDs, there's the chance of weird performance characteristics. It would be even worse to recommend something bad for the sake of it, so if you're interested in a 27-inch 4K HDR LCD, then check back throughout the year as we test some more monitors. If you're after a mid-range gaming monitor, the best options right now are 27-inch 4K mid-refresh SDR displays. Prices continue to be quite attractive in this category for the time being, with lots of decent options sitting below $500 US. There is no reason to spend more than this on a 4K 144Hz monitor in 2024, given our testing has revealed that most of these displays deliver similar performance thanks to widespread use of fast IPS panels. There's a range of options here that are worth considering depending on pricing in your region. One of the best options is the LG 27GR93U, a 27-inch 4K 144Hz IPS LCD with great tuning, providing fast response times for gaming in line with other modern IPS panels, and a single overdrive mode experience. Factory calibration is reasonable, brightness is excellent, and LG support hardware calibration, a feature not often seen on other options. It's a nicely balanced product that's suitable for both gaming and desktop work. Currently in the US, you'll find the 27GR93U for about $450, which isn't the lowest price for a 27-inch 4K monitor, but it's still a good deal, and every so often a discount will push it lower. In Australia, they're about $750, in Europe about the €400 mark, so a very similar position. On a similar level to the LG in performance is the Asus ROG Strix XG27 UCS, which also uses a 27-inch 4K IPS LCD panel, but with a slightly higher 160Hz refresh rate. Motion clarity is similar to the 27GR93U, and factory calibration is slightly better in the sRGB mode, but otherwise the two are very closely matched. In Europe and the US, you're looking at roughly the same price for both variants. In Australia, the Asus model is slightly cheaper, so I'd be considering both. It's hard to pick a clear winner. Also of interest might be the Asus ROG Strix XG27 UCG, which is a dual-mode version of this display that can also be run at 1080p 320Hz, providing additional clarity and lower input lag for multiplayer gamers at the expense of resolution. It otherwise performs similarly to the XG27 UCS, trading blows in areas like response times and color accuracy. Typically, the UCG is a little more expensive, which makes sense as it adds dual mode to the package, but occasionally you'll find both models at a very similar price point. In that case, either one is worth considering. In fact, if anything, I'd be leaning towards the UCG because it's a more feature-rich product. Gigabyte offers some really solid 27-inch 4K options too, including the M27U, M27UA, and M28U. The M27U and M27UA are basically the same 27-inch 4K 160Hz IPS LCD product. The M27UA is a newer version with some tweaks to tuning that typically increase performance. It's very slightly faster and has more accurate colors. These options trade blows with the aforementioned Asus and LG monitors. There's no clear winner here. All offer a nicely balanced experience at a very similar price. Like is often the case, I would probably just get the cheapest one, unless there was a specific aspect to one of the options that you were interested in. The M28U is also still in the mix despite being an older product, and in fact in the United States it's one of the cheapest 4K monitors on the market. It's pretty similar to the M27U family in performance and color accuracy, but it doesn't get as bright, it consumes more power, and has a somewhat lower DCI-P3 gamut coverage. The M27UA is the better version, but the differences present in the M28U are on the minor end of the scale, so it's definitely worth considering if it's among the cheapest options you can get. There are no major changes to my recommendations for a 32-inch 4K SDR gaming monitor. Right now, there are a couple of options worth considering in this category, but the leading candidate is the LG 32GR93U, a 32-inch 4K 144Hz IPS LCD. Over the last 6 months, prices have been relatively flat, sitting between $500 and $600. Ideally, you'd find one near that $500 mark, so wait for a discount as there is a consistent price cycle with this one. The 32GR93U performs well across a range of different areas. It delivers good response times, and LG have tuned it well to offer a single overdrive mode experience. It's not the fastest product going around at 144Hz, but it's optimized to avoid inverse ghosting artifacts. Among 32-inch LCD monitors, this is one of the best displays I've seen in that area, which is especially important as older 32-inch models from a few years ago weren't very impressive in terms of motion quality. This is complemented by great factory color tuning, an excellent sRGB mode, hardware calibration support, strong DCI-P3 color space coverage, and good brightness. It offers fantastic versatility for those that want to game and use the nice large 32-inch 4K panel for productivity work. It's a really nice dual-use monitor. The main drawback here is that you aren't getting any real HDR hardware capabilities, but this isn't a huge concern at this sort of price. The other option around this price point is the Gigabyte M32UP along with the older M32U. The M32UP is the more recent product and it trades blows with the 32GR93U, both in performance and price. The LG monitor is slightly better tuned for response times and motion performance and has higher SDR brightness. The Gigabyte monitor is a bit better calibrated and has a few additional features like a KVM switch and USB-C port. There's no clear winner here, it comes down to the features you desire, and I think both options have a fair price right now. So that's it for this 4K gaming monitor recommendation video. Lots of great options on the market right now, prices continue to get cheaper across the board, and there are some new entrants that are worth considering. There's never been a better time to enter the 4K gaming ecosystem, and with more options set for release throughout 2025, it's only going to get better. As always, if you do want to learn more about the monitors I've been talking about in this video, I have individual reviews available right here on Monitors Unboxed for most of them. I'd also recommend checking the links in the description for updated pricing information, as this does change over time, so check down there if you're watching this video weeks or months after it went live. Also, if you want to support Monitors Unboxed, the best way to do that is via our Patreon page. Links to that is in the description below. It takes a long time to put together one of these recommendation guides, as we do test the vast majority of products that we talk about in these videos. Doing in-depth testing like that is very in-depth. It takes a lot of time. So yeah, if you want to continue supporting us to test monitors and make these guides, the best way to do that is via Patreon. If you sign up, you will gain access to some pretty cool benefits. We've got all of the OSD settings that we recommend for these monitors, as well as calibrated profiles available for Patreon members. We've also got a Discord chat, great place to chat about monitors, get advice, get recommendations, and I'm in there at times giving some thoughts every once in a while. And we also have BTS content and plenty of other good stuff. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.